I know The Secret of Shadow Ranch is everyone's favorite Nancy Drew game, but I don't like it all that much, and I'm probably going to get a ton of angry comments on this review. We have a new interface starting with this game. While the game still plays at 640 by 480, the borders were reduced significantly. Before there was a 50 pixel margin on the left and right side of the screen. That's gone. Now the top left and right margins are more like 5 pixels. The bottom of the screen shrunk from 188 pixels to 100. They were able to make this change by moving the menu and help buttons down to the bottom corners. The buttons work the same way they did before, they're just in a different spot. The bottom left corner had some empty space. I'm kind of surprised they didn't move the buttons there and keep everything else the same. That would have been fine, but they went the extra mile and they made several other changes that I'll mention later, because I'm not going to start this video talking about the interface for 5 minutes. That would be super boring. The premise of this game is that Nancy's on vacation in Arizona, only nobody's there to greet her, all she has is a phone number and a creepy feeling. It's just like Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. Nobody says anything until you call the Raleighs. They explain that Ed was bitten by a snake and they'll be in the hospital for the entire game. I would say the Raleighs are mildly entertaining and friendly. Nancy certainly treats them like her real aunt and uncle. The problem is that most of the game over sequences are the Raleighs getting mad at you and kicking you off the ranch. That ruins the Raleighs for me. I would like to be friends with them and think of them as the innocent victims of the game, but I can't. All I can remember is them being mean and treating me like just garbage for no reason. It's the same problem I have with Paula Santos in the Haunted Carousel. The Raleighs ask Nancy to take an envelope over to Mary Yazie's. Ed mentions a phantom horse, but he's interrupted by a nurse. I always thought this was Nurse Bluefoot from Secret of the Scarlet Hand. They have similar voices. I like the phantom horse cliffhanger. It was really neat. It really should be the cliffhanger that they start the game off with. It's a much better hook than, "Oh no, nobody will talk to me." The Raleigh's living room is a very colorful place, and the scenery in this game is great. It's fantastic. They did a good job of maximizing all of the indoor areas. Almost everywhere you look, there's something cool to see, so great job on that. Nancy starts the game near Shorty. Shorty is my favorite character, although that is not saying much because the other options are the quiet store owner, grumpy cowboy, and less grumpy cowboy. Friendly chef is easily the best of the bunch. Shorty balances out the rest of the cast, not only in terms of his personality, but his design. I like his flannel shirt and suspenders. He's bald, a little chubby, with big eyebrows. Shorty explains the phantom horse belonged to Dirk Valentine, an outlaw who was hung by the sheriff. He was in love with Frances Humber, the sheriff's daughter. What a tragic romance. But you know what's even more tragic? Chores. Shorty orders you to pick ripe vegetables. He warns you in advance he's going to be furious with you if you get it wrong. If it's that important, Shorty, why aren't you doing the job yourself? Why don't you help Nancy? Even if you tell Shorty, "I don't know anything about vegetables," he refuses to help. What a jerk! I take back the nice things I just said about him. When you finish talking to Shorty, you get a phone call from Bess and George. They have unexpected plane problems for the entire game, which is why they're not at the ranch. I like the storyline with Bess and George. It makes them feel more involved in this game, compared to previous games where they're just sitting at home not really doing anything. However, I don't like how the cousins and the Raleighs are both delayed for 3 days. Those two stories are too similar for them to be going on at the same time. But Bess and George are great. Bess has good jokes about suing people, and I really like her line, "You found love letters? I love love letters." Meanwhile, George is bored, so she got a book on 1800s fashion. It's pretty obvious this will become useful later. The right side of the backyard has the horse area. Nancy uses a cutesy voice when first talking to the horses. Yuck. Tex has a black hat and mustache. He looks like a generic cowboy villain. He could easily double as a bad guy in Cappy's slot machine. He angrily whispers all the time. He's kinda nasty, and he orders you to do Shorty's chores. Dang it, Tex, Nancy's on vacation. Dave spends his whole day looking at the corner of the chicken coop. I guess there's something fascinating there. He's always looking at it. I think Dave looks like a generic cowboy, but the internet tells me he is a super handsome guy. He's got a dependable voice, and he certainly seems responsible. Dave is reserved here on the first day of the game. He says it's not a good time for anyone to be here, and he indicates he doesn't want you to ask him too many questions. I'm kind of sad that both of Nancy's dialogue options here say that she's not a real detective. This is game 10, Nancy. You are a real detective by now. Dave gives you the key to the roll-top desk. Let's go back to talking about the new interface. Nancy's inventory used to be at the bottom of the screen at all times. Now there is a separate inventory window, which players have to constantly open and shut. It's not as convenient, and I especially dislike it when the game makes you put things back into the inventory. The roll-top desk is a perfect example. To open it, you must open your inventory, select the key, close the inventory, click on the desk, open the inventory, put the key back in the inventory, close the inventory, and then explore the desk. That's a lot of extra steps you have to take because of the new interface. Obviously, it's not that big a problem. I quickly got used to the new interface, but it's still kind of annoying. About half the items stay in your inventory for the entire game, like the key. The other half go away when you're finished with them. The roll-top desk has 3 papers. One's a receipt from Mary after she bought a trunk from the Raleighs. Another is a nasty letter from Jane Nash. She's furious that she was fired without being given a second chance. That's not fair. Nancy gets to use the second chance button all the time. And the last paper is a letter for Mary. It's easy to miss the 3 handles in the upper left corner of the desk. They go in the blanket box in the corner. Each hole in the box has a specific color, which corresponds to the colors on the clock above the fireplace. So red is 12, blue is 1, yellow 7. Solving the puzzle opens up a hidden compartment. Inside is a letter from Dirk to Francis. We get to hear what Dirk's voice sounds like, which is a great touch, and it's a sweet letter. He explains that you can find his treasure by doing a big scavenger hunt. You have to start with the Petroglyph challenge, but the problem is you can't finish the Petroglyph challenge until day 2. So most of day 1 half feels like a huge waste of time to me. I want to find the treasure, not do chores. Dirk's letter says there's a clue in his jail cell, but the cell is locked, so Nancy can't see the puzzle he left there. I don't understand why. It's written on the wall. You can look at walls from more than one angle. But whatever. Meryl Humber's diary is here, and it's very sad, especially the parts where he cries. It adds another dimension to this already interesting love story. I like it a lot. The love story is great. Meryl's pocket watch is in here, so you need to press the 6 even numbers in the correct order. The correct order is random. Solving the puzzle gives you a picture of Meryl and Francis, along with a watch fob. It's the same picture that's in Francis's watch. It's cute how their watches are matching, and it's sad that she ripped her picture in half. The first chore is starting a fire. You need to get newspapers from the fireplace. One paper mentions the bank robbers, who are the culprit's accomplices. We never see the bank robbers, and this is the only time they get mentioned. I would have preferred it if the bank robbers weren't part of the story at all. If Shorty had done everything by himself, it would have worked just fine that way. Giving him unseen accomplices that don't really factor into the story just seems weird to me. The woodcutting challenge is by the door. I like this challenge. It's kind of fun and the interface is intuitive. It'd make way more sense if Nancy put the wedge in the center of the log every time, but that wouldn't make for a good challenge. You choose where to stand on a 3x3 grid, and you pick which of the 5 angles to swing the hammer. It's a lot like Squid Toss, come to think of it. After 3 rounds, Nancy says, "Call me Nancy Paul Bunyan Drew." I'd rather call you Nancy Terrible Nicknamer Drew. You also need to find twigs. They're scattered all over the yard. The navigation here is not good. Most of the twigs can only be found if you approach them from specific angles. I'm sure they did that on purpose to make this challenge harder, but I don't like it. I would rather have smooth, consistent navigation throughout the entire backyard. Compare this to the ghost hunt in Curse of Blackmore Manor. They're similar challenges, but it's so much better in Blackmore Manor because the navigation's better. I'm also frustrated because you can clearly see twigs to the left of the chicken coop when you talk to Dave, but you can never go there to pick up those twigs. That entire section of the backyard can't be accessed. That's what I'm talking about when I complain the non-ideal navigation in the backyard makes this challenge a pain. The final thing for the fireplace is a bucket. Pick up the bucket, you go into the watershed, you fill it up with water, then you put it back in place. It's easy enough. Inside the finished fire pit is a half-burned note written in code. How mysterious! When you decode the message at the end of the game, it says they'll need more supplies if the treasure isn't found soon, and they should check the bookshelf again. I don't think that note was worth the 3-hour wait, to be honest. There's a thermostat by the door. Nancy notes it's a scorcher. Her antiperspirant is gonna get a workout today. That's gross, Nancy. I don't need to hear about your armpit sweat. Next to the thermometer is a vegetable basket. Vegetable picking is a huge pain. It's easily the worst part of the game, and unlike the other challenges, you have to do it 3 times. Why couldn't they repeat one of the fun challenges all 3 days? You learn about veggies on Nancy's phone. The phone changed from being an inventory item to a permanent icon at the bottom of the screen. It's been upgraded to replace the laptop that Nancy used for the past few games. So that is, you can use her phone to search the internet and get email. Sadly, email continues to be pretty useless. This will be the last game where Nancy gets emails. You have to go back and forth between the vegetables and the pictures of vegetables on your phone. This was not optimized. It takes 8 clicks to get to the vegetable pictures you need, because the first 3 screens on the webpage is irrelevant information about bell peppers. You have to scroll through the bell pepper stuff every single time to get to the stuff you actually need. It's an unnecessary hassle. Ripe Romano beans are green, while ripe black turtle beans are gray. Unripe Romano looks just like ripe black turtle. It's a trick that is sure to fool people. Beefsteak tomatoes are the only ones that look like real vegetables. Ripe vegetables in real life. Check out this picture with a red tomato and a yellow tomato next to each other. This picture is confusing because it doesn't say which tomato is correct. Do I pick the red ones or the yellow ones? You're supposed to pick the red ones, even though the yellow one is more prominent in the picture. The text is badly placed here. You can't tell if it goes with the picture above it or below it just by looking at this. You have to scroll up to see if the pictures or text come first. It would have been better if we got to see the entire picture with the caption all on the same screen together. All in all, it's just a terrible puzzle. You get a game over sequence if you get too much unripe stuff, too much overripe stuff, or a mixture of both. Shorty will criticize you if you didn't pick all the ripe vegetables. That's annoying. How does Shorty know how many ripe vegetables are outside today? He must have seen them in the garden himself to know. In which case, why didn't he pick the vegetables? You're a jerk, Shorty. I guess Her Interactive realized this was a terrible, terrible puzzle because they at least give you one opportunity to mess up before throwing you into a game over sequence. When you're done with the vegetable challenge, Shorty gives you a basket for eggs. When you get your first egg, the basket breaks, and this is a simple jigsaw puzzle. I like it. You want to put the different pieces in horizontal rows. You sort them according to shape and pattern. Pieces snap into place when they're correct. There are 8 nests in the hen house. Click on the nest to see if they have any eggs. One chicken has a warning sign. I call it the chicken of doom, because it will attack you and give you a game over sequence. Jeez! The Raleighs blame Nancy for traumatizing the chicken and not following directions. They tell her to go home. What jerks! Evil chicken of doom. Well, you have to go to the hen house twice in order to get all 6 eggs. Just like the veggies, Shorty magically knows if you didn't get everything. Once you finish with the chores, Shorty gives you a canteen. Now Tex will let you ride old Bob. You need to grab the hat and saddle first, then tighten the saddle. You have to do this every time you go riding. It's kind of repetitive. Just like Holt Scotto in the previous game, Tex gives you a 10-question quiz to prove you know what you're doing. He wears a handkerchief over his mouth during the quiz, presumably to save on animation. Each question has 4 possible answers, and you can totally guess answers randomly until you get them all. Tex lets you do that. But really, the answers are scattered all over the ranch. You're supposed to be a good sleuth and find them. When the quiz is done, you leave the corral and go to Mary's Gifts. It's shaped like a half circle. There are displays on tuning forks, petroglyphs, painted rocks, and Charlena Purcell's romance novel. It has her phone number. Charlena must be a huge deal if she's got a professional business line for her trashy romances. There's a game called Run for Cover, which is the bee's knees game from the final scene, only it's a coyote and a roadrunner this time. I like this game. It is a good challenge. There are 3 levels, and when you beat it, you get an old token. Mary is a Native American woman with gray hair. Like Jenna from the previous game, she's kind of forgettable. Because she's not on the ranch, she's too disconnected from the main storyline to be an effective suspect. And her acting is bland. Like, watch this scene of her getting mad.
Bad news? They rejected my offer. Well, I guess that's that.
She does not look or sound like an angry person. Mary is angry because the Raleighs rejected her offer to buy some ranch property. That's Mary's motive, but since the Raleighs aren't around, it's impossible for the storyline to go anywhere. Mary gives you directions to the Petroglyphs area, and she says you can try to open the locked trunk. Nancy has to call Charlena Purcell, who's got a board assistant. I love the recording that gushes about her lovely romance novels. It's cute. Charlena says the image on the trunk represents a date, April 9th, 1811. In junior mode, she says the numbers. In senior mode, she says the date. That is a clever way to change the difficulty. You put the handles in the trunk and you set them to 4, 9, 11. The trunk opens and Nancy gets to have the watch from inside. Open it with the fob from the other watch, and this time you have to press the 6 odd numbers. This gives you half of a message, which is green bottle under. When Nancy returns to the ranch, she disturbs Zeke's saddle. Whoever Zeke is. Inside Zeke's pocket is a letter from Jane Nash to Tex. She's Tex's sister! When you confront Tex, he gets mad and calls you a snoop, telling you to mind your own business. Later on, he'll admit Jane is his sister, but she's not mad anymore and kinda deserved to be fired. And that's the end of that subplot. So Tex and Mary have their motives wrapped up pretty early on. They start having secret meetings together. On day 2, Nancy sees them when she leaves and returns to the ranch. I like that, although it's a little strange Nancy doesn't go over and talk to them. Still, I kind of wish there had been a second mention of Tex's sister somewhere in the game. When you're done with the chores and the watch, day 1 comes to an end. The cooking scene here is great. We get to see all 3 cowboys together. I like seeing multiple characters on screen at once, interacting with each other. Shorty does terrible singing until Tex can't take anymore and leaves. Dave leaves too, and Shorty goes on an angry rant about how unappreciated he is. Why, he put a lot of hard work into that dinner, and he did not. He forced Nancy to do all of the cooking work. You're a fraud, Shorty. I got the ingredients, not you. Nancy watches the fire until she sees the phantom horse. It looks pretty great. The horse looks great. The horse runs past the pump house. The top explodes, covering everything with water. It's just a cool scene. Nancy thinks the culprit used the horse as a diversion to sabotage the pump house, which is a good theory, but the horse drew attention to the pump house. He didn't divert attention away from the pump house. It was still a great scene, so I don't really care. Uncle Ed warns Nancy to look out for sudden storms, which is such a specific line, I have to wonder if they were going to have storms in this game at some point. Shorty's area has a map for mineral deposits. He catches you snooping and claims he was looking for gold as part of a failed get-rich-quick scheme. Nancy has to apologize to Shorty, and he forgives her. I'm not sorry, by the way. Shorty wants you to do the same chores as yesterday. No! Getting the eggs only takes 1 trip this time, so that's nice. That's an improvement. A rattlesnake is in the vegetables. You need to see the rattlesnake, or no, you need to hear the rattlesnake, then back away and return later, or else the snake is going to kill you. It's going to kill you instant death. Even though when Ed's bitten, he's okay. Nancy's bitten? Dead. This time with vegetable picking, you don't need to pick any Northern Lights or Golden Queens, which always throws me off and it makes me second guess if I'm doing it correctly. Shorty has a 3rd chore, and no, this is why I hate the game. It's all just dumb chores. Shorty wants to make Tex a birthday cake today, but he figures Tex will like the cake more if Nancy makes it. That's a pretty weak excuse, Shorty. The truth is that Tex would like the cake more if you weren't a terrible cook. Now, I like the cooking challenge. Making a cake is moderately easy, and I say moderately because I always seem to screw up the ingredients even though I know what I'm doing. But the rest of the challenge is random guessing. I don't like it. It totally ruins the baking challenge for me. So first you have to guess, what pan do you use? If you pick the small pan, Nancy will spill batter all over the counter because she's an idiot who doesn't know to stop pouring once the container's full. You're forced to start over from the beginning again. If you pick the rectangular pan, the cake will be burned no matter what, and you're forced to start over from the beginning again. So there is a 1 in 3 chance of guessing the correct pan. Then, you have to guess what temperature to cook the cake at, and for how long. There are no clues, you just have to guess and hope you got it right. You will fail if you get the wrong temperature or the wrong time. This guessing challenge is bad. It ruins what is otherwise a good puzzle. There are too many ways to fail, and nothing to help you succeed besides random guessing. After this is a jigsaw puzzle to make Francis Humber's marzipan flour. I like this challenge. It's nice. If the cake baking challenge was just the jigsaw puzzle and adding ingredients, I would love it. On the third day of the game, you can eat some of the cake. Shorty will say Tex liked it. Aww. Tex orders you to feed the chickens and the horses. This is another chore I'm horrible at. I think day 2 is the worst when it comes to the chores. Call me a city slicker if you want, but I have no idea what the horse food is. Mixed pellets and chicken chow and corn look pretty similar. I'm forced to guess what the different ingredients are, and that makes this puzzle so much worse. If the food was labeled, that would help immensely. The funny part is that's not supposed to be the tough part of the puzzle. The tough part is supposed to be that the recipes are listed in terms of pounds, not scoops. Tex brings out Bess and George's horses every day, even though Bess and George aren't here. He complains it's unfair to the horses to bring them out if no one's going to ride them. Well, I say it's unfair to Nancy to bring out 2 extra horses just to make this puzzle harder. The pump house has a sign from Sheriff Hernandez. I like Hernandez's voice, but he's kind of a pointless character. He gives Nancy permission to enter the pump house and Cappy's. That's mostly all he does. They easily could have left those areas unlocked and eliminated Hernandez from the game completely. Hernandez says, Dave was impressed with you in more ways than one. Oh my, how romantic! And odd because Nancy only talked to Dave once to get a key. Inside the pump house is the corroded pipe with an arrowhead next to it. It's easy to miss that arrowhead because it's nowhere near the others. One of the shelves was moved, revealing a hidden passageway to the basement. Nancy goes through the passageway and surprises Dave, who is searching under the stairs. A flustered Dave explains his great Aunt Ellie is Francis Humber's cousin. She gave him a clue to Dirk's treasure. Dave is hoping to find the treasure so he can pay his brother's medical bills. Aw, Dave is such a nice guy. Dave says he has to tend to his chores and he runs away. Ah yes, the chores we never see him do. The cellar has a jar of acid and an old purse with a missing flower design. You need to ask George for help. She emails you the information from her book, but you need to get beads from Mary first. And this puzzle is really terrible. I'm glad it's an optional puzzle. I usually skip it because it's super annoying. Mary forces you to fix her jewelry display. You have to sort all the rings by color and pattern. That's okay, but then you have to sort them all by size, and the sizes are just random arbitrary symbols, like moon is smaller than butterfly. What? It's a long, terrible puzzle. Once you're done, you put the beads onto the purse, which is also a puzzle. Following the pattern's a little difficult, because 2 of the colors are RPC and BRC. Anyway, the flower's a poppy. Dave's clue is stairs to cellar. Well, he was looking under the wrong stairs. Under the correct stairs is a slider puzzle. Unlike the other slider puzzles in this series, your goal is not to move the piece all the way across the board. Your goal is to move the piece once. That's a unique slider puzzle idea, which I haven't seen in any other game. It's cool. The senior mode version of the puzzle is a little too hard for me, though. It's something like 20 steps minimum. Ooh. Solving the puzzle gets you 3 letters from Dirk. They list out where to find the various flowers. I kind of wish we got to keep the letters in our inventory, but Nancy puts them back and summarizes them in her journal. Since Nancy's phone replaced her laptop, her case notes and task list were moved to a journal. It's an icon at the bottom of her screen. I love the new journal. It is great. I generally don't read the journal when I'm replaying the game, but it is still great. It does a fantastic job of letting players know what they still have to do in order to proceed. I wish other adventure games had a task list like the Nancy Drew games do. Making the task list a permanent thing you can check at all times was a great idea, so thumbs up to this game for that. When you talk to Dave, he says he's going to blush every time he sees you from now on. Oh, Dave, you were already blushing every time you saw Nancy. Dave gives you a letter from his aunt. Well, he lets you see the letter, it's got a flower on it, and he gives you directions to the ghost town. Finally, Dave asks you to do the chicken wire puzzle tonight. He can't do it because he's got to do an errand. Even though he tells Nancy about this far in advance, she still gets suspicious that Dave isn't around at night. Did Nancy forget that Dave told her he'd be gone? Uncle Ed will explain Dave was buying a secret birthday present for Aunt Bet. You just ruined the surprise with your bad memory, Nancy. Tex has writing challenges for you. The barrel race requires you to spin around 3 barrels in under 10 seconds. As far as I can tell, the challenge is simply click when you're near a barrel. The timing is certainly more generous than the brass ring challenge from the Haunted Carousel. Tex also has a lasso challenge. You need to lasso the wooden sawhorse 4 times out of 5. You watch the lasso, you click whenever you see a perfect circle. It appears to be random when the circle appears, and the timing for this challenge is not generous. I have sometimes screwed up on this puzzle over and over. The timing is so touch and go that I prefer to hold down the mouse button and release it just to save a fraction of a second. But even if the lasso can be frustrating sometimes, I would rather do it 20 times in a row than do vegetable picking once. Once you lasso and barrel race, Nancy and Tex go back inside. I thought that was annoying because it forces you to saddle up your horse twice in a row. Why couldn't Tex have given Nancy the lariat outside? He was already outside doing the barrel race. There's no reason for him and Nancy to go somewhere else to talk. Anyway, he gives you the lariat, so now you can finally do the Petroglyph challenge. You can finally start trying to find the treasure. So, you have to put the petroglyphs on Dirk's map. For example, the bird petroglyph is under the hole in the rock in the upper left area. You put the bird on that square of the grid. The squares that get petroglyphs are marked with a different color, which helps a lot. You need the lariat to reach the upper area at Cougar Bend. The 3 petroglyphs in the upper area are the only ones you don't have to zoom in on in order to get them added to your map. Once you solve the puzzle, you get the message, beneath Cappy's keys, Pappy's name please. I'm glad that the game auto-solves the puzzle of matching letters to pictures for you, because I have a feeling it would have been a huge pain to solve that puzzle on my own. There are 3 arrowheads here, 2 at the ghost town. The arrowhead by the outhouse is protected by Scorpion. It's just like the rattlesnake by the vegetables. You have to see it, then you back away and come back later in order to get the arrowhead. So, the ghost town, that was a cool location. It's kind of scary too. Nancy hears random noises. She wonders if she's alone or if it's just Bob the horse playing a prank on her. Cappy's is locked by the sheriff. You have to leave the ghost town in order to call the sheriff, which is annoying. You leave, make a phone call, and immediately come back. He gives you the combination for the lock, and it makes me happy that you only have to enter the combination once. That is an improvement over the previous game, which forced you to enter the combination to the lighthouse lock every single time, and you'll notice it's the exact same lock for both games. It looks like the bank robbers are hiding out at Cappy's. There's a sleeping bag as well as an electrician's manual, which is covered with powder. When I first saw this, I thought it was dust, but it turns out to be magic glowing powder that's used on the horse. I don't know how it got all over the electrical book here. Did the culprits take the horse inside Cappy's in order to coat it with powder? One of the flowers is on the cracker can here, but it's worn out. All Nancy can see is the slogan. She has to leave the ghost town again to call Charlena. Charlena will email you the cracker information, and she says Dirk's Pappy was Cashmere. So you go back to Cappy's and you enter Cashmere on the piano. It's an okay puzzle, and it gives you the next clue about forks and a crank at BDI's ranch. The crank is on a random porch in town. BD is written on the porch of the jail, which marks the location of a hidden machine. The tuning forks are at Mary Ozzy's. She'll give them to you in exchange for 10 arrowheads. You've already got 6 of them. The final 4 are at the trail stop, which is an interesting place to look at. I like it. I kind of wish we got to explore more of this area, but Nancy refuses to walk very far. Once you collect all the arrowheads, Mary lets you keep one. I don't know why. It's neat to look at, it's just, why do I have it? Once you've got everything, you go back to Cappy's, you put the machine on the counter, and you use the letters on the tuning forks to spell out the name Francis. And that is a cute puzzle. It's clever and sweet. When you solve it, the lamp breaks. Inside is a paper which says to use a magnet at Zebra Rock. But there's a rattlesnake at Zebra Rock to prevent you from solving the puzzle too early. So, instead, you go back to the ranch and end day 2. I should note that there is a glitch at this point where the game does not go ahead to nighttime, the game stays in daytime, and you're stuck on day 2 forever. I don't know what triggers this glitch because it's never happened to me, but I can understand why this would totally upset people. You get 70% of the way through the game, and then you have to start over from the beginning again? That stinks! The chicken wire puzzle is kinda neat. It's a jigsaw puzzle where you have to get the edges of the wire to match up. I do give this game credit. Some of the puzzles are unique and creative. I like them, but then other puzzles are just chores and they're terrible. Once you solve the puzzle, the ghost horse reappears and the power line is cut, and the next day, Shorty's surprised Nancy's still here instead of leaving, and then he gives you a bunch of chores. Well, now I feel like leaving. With the veggies, you take everything on the one side. On the other side, you only take the northern lights. You have to take 2 trips to get all the eggs because the chicken of doom is back. I am glad that the last day of chores is the easiest, but I am still running on angry fumes after the 2 previous days. Tex's chore is fixing a bridle, which is a jigsaw puzzle. There's a finished bridle nearby, so you can use that as a guide. Even though it's pretty simple, I thought this one's kind of a pain. I didn't really like it. Again, maybe I just have leftover anger from the other chores. Nancy sees a horseshoe outside, which has a rock in it. Tex confirms the rock comes from the ghost town. He denies that he had a secret meeting with Mary. Nancy cleverly tricks Mary into revealing the truth by pretending Tex already told her. And that is great. I like that scene. I love it when Nancy is extra smart. Mary thinks Tex wants their relationship to be secret because he doesn't want to lose his tough guy image. Sounds pretty accurate to me. The next time you go to Cappy's, Nancy notices the sleeping bag is gone. In its place is a key. That is the perfect bait for a trap to capture Nancy Drew. When Nancy goes to grab it, she's knocked out from behind. The game doesn't say who did it, but I'm guessing it's the bank robber accomplices, not Shorty. Nancy wakes up in Dirk's jail cell. She wanted to go there anyway, so the culprits accidentally helped her by trying to stop her. On the wall is a simple number code where 1 equals A, 2 equals B, and so on. This gives you the message, under bank lamp. The key to the cell is on a hook nearby. Nancy needs to use her lasso to pull the chair under the key. I am super impressed at her ability to use a lasso through the bars of a jail cell. Nancy needs to knock the key off the hook with a brick. Luckily, there's an infinite amount of bricks here in the cell. The challenge is the same as the rock skipping challenge from the previous game. You pick how hard to throw and what angle to throw. If you miss, you can turn around and get more bricks. If you don't pull the chair below the key first, the key will fall into a hole, and presumably, Nancy will die of starvation. She mentioned the ghost town to Bess, George, Tex, and Dave. One of them will save her eventually. Nancy gets the key, she escapes. On the floor, she finds the cipher to the culprit's coded messages. Well, coded message, there's only the one message. Under the bank lamp is a note that says to use the ring, which matches Ellie's on Cappy's fun machine. So Nancy goes back to Dave and asks for his aunt's ring. When she tells Dave about Tex and Mary, he says he can't believe it. But then again, the human heart never does play by the rules. He clears his throat and asks Nancy if she has a steady back home. Oh, Dave. It's like her interactive knew Dave would be one of the most popular, handsome characters in the entire series. But he quickly backtracks and says he shouldn't have asked. The fun machine puzzle is a pain. You put in the ring and the panel switches to say you need to make 4 nice friends. And you get 2 tries. You pull the lever, select any nice friends you got, then pull the lever again. The challenge is completely random and it takes a long time to win, even if you save and reload constantly to give yourself unlimited tries. I feel terrible for anyone who had to go back to Mary's for another token after each failed attempt. When you win, you get the Ballerina Key. To get the Ballerina box, you have to use the magnet at Zebra Rock. And this puzzle is also a huge pain. You have 4 tokens that you have to lead through a maze, but a good deal of the maze is covered with planks, so you can't see where you're moving the tokens. You will get annoyed by the sound of constant picking up and dropping pieces. The tokens have to go in the right spots. Silicon is gray, red is iron, blue is copper, pink is manganese. I don't think there are any clues which tell you what color is which. You just have to know in advance or be a good guesser. And the guessing element just makes this bad puzzle even worse. No, there is a cheat that you can zoom in on the puzzle and then back away and do that like 5 times in a row until the planks disappear. That's a really helpful cheat. It's like the game developers had such a hard time doing this puzzle themselves, they just built in a cheat so they wouldn't have to deal with the puzzle. When you finally solve the puzzle, you get a flower box. You want to click on all the flowers, so all 7 of Francis's favorite flowers appear on screen at the same time. This is an okay puzzle, but I'm not a flower expert, so I get tripped up on easy stuff, like which one is a daisy? The flower puzzle gives you the ballerina box, which you open with the ballerina key. That gives you a paper. It says to draw lines on the petroglyph map. When you do, it makes a V shape, which matches one of the petroglyphs. And this is neat. That is a neat idea. So you go back to the petroglyph area, and you look behind that petroglyph. It's a picture agate that's hidden there. You have to have Mary clean the agate. Nancy steps outside while Mary does this. I have no idea why she doesn't wait inside, but whatever. Now the agate is clean again. And just like the last game, Bess and George call Nancy here. She makes it clear that this is the endgame challenge. Nancy uses the picture agate on the grave at Trail's End. Then she spins around until she sees the trees in the scenery. Wow, I can't believe those trees still look the exact same after all this time. Nancy rides in that direction towards cliff dwellings. I love how the map shows a question mark for the location. That's funny. If you try to back away from this area at this point, Nancy's phone will just be dead and you can't use it to call anybody. The cliff dwellings are a maze. Dirk's instructions are written by the entrance. It says what colored doors you have to go through in order to reach the end. The problem is that you also have to find 5 keys, which are hidden in different pots in the maze. Dirk's instructions don't say where the keys are. In fact, you have to break his instructions to find the keys. So it's not helpful to have instructions for a maze when the instructions don't lead you correctly. A good example is the third to last one. Dirk says to go through the green doorway. You're actually supposed to go through red first. And there's nothing that indicates you have to do this. You just have to be good at guessing. It is good that they put a key in this particular room, because that way players are likely to notice there's a blanket covering a hole in the ground. That's for the endgame challenge. So Dirk's instructions lead to a door on the second floor, and there's a minor challenge putting all the keys in the lock. It's simple, just match the keys to the outlines. This lets you into Dirk's hideout, which has a lot of gold hearts. It's romantic, and it's wealthy and shiny. When Nancy leaves, she sees Shorty in the maze below, so let me talk about the last change to the game interface, which is the text box. In previous games, the text box was always at the bottom of the screen. Starting with this game, the text box only appears when somebody's talking, and it covers the entire bottom part of the screen. A larger text box was a good idea. It definitely cuts down on the amount of scrolling through text that you have to do. They also made the text slightly larger, although it's kind of hard to see that. I wish there was an option to change the text size, though. It would be neat if you could make it bigger or smaller, depending on your preferences. The game uses a second, smaller text box. It holds 2 lines of dialogue. It's only used when Nancy talks to herself or when somebody's talking to her off screen. It's used here in Shorty's culprit reveal. Shorty uses the big text box, while Nancy uses the small one, so we switch text boxes with every other line of dialogue. This also happens when Mary throws away her letter and when Nancy sees Dave under the stairs. It's just a weird, minor inconsistency that kind of bugs me. Another inconsistency is that Nancy's dialogue is white in the smaller text box. Everywhere else her dialogue is light blue. I have no idea why. Shorty confesses that he and his buddies sabotaged the ranch to scare people away. Nancy lies and says the treasure is gone, but he doesn't believe her, and she can't escape because he ran her horse off. Don't worry about Bob, though. Her interactive says Dave brought him back to the ranch safely, so it's a happy ending for Bob, who clearly should have been the game's main character. Shorty has a terrifying death scene. Here's Shorty. You have to stop Shorty by switching the door markers, that way he falls through the hole under the blanket. Shorty's kind of an idiot for thinking the treasure's here in this clearly empty room. Also an idiot for thinking, this is the last door, Nancy, when it's not the last door, it's the third to last door. Shorty complains that your trick was downright mean, but Shorty, you tried to murder Nancy. She is not the villain here. Nancy rides the phantom horse back to the ranch, and it's a happy ending for everyone. Tex and Mary become an official couple, and there's a cute picture of him blushing at her. Dave will presumably get the money to help his sick brother, and there's a picture of Nancy and her friends riding horses. Humorously, Dave's fingers cover all of their heads. Dave. And Charlena's book is not a trashy romance after all. Consider me surprised. So that's it for the game. I like the music and the visuals and the storyline. Those are all great, especially the love storyline. That was fantastic. A lot of the puzzles that were love related were cute, and a lot of the upgrades to the interface were great too. So I can see why people love this game. It's got a lot of good stuff into it. But for me, there are just too many puzzles I flat out dislike. Vegetable picking, cooking, animal feeding, ring sorting. These endless chores just keep getting in my way, and they stop me from getting fully immersed in the game. I can see why it's a great game, but I just don't enjoy it. It's just not one of my favorites. So I give Nancy Drew number 10, Secret of Shadow Ranch, a 6 out of 10.
But a friend of one of his bank robber buddies had trained. Since my horse was gone and it was getting dark, I wound up riding it back to the ranch so I could call the sheriff. You should have seen the look on everyone's face when I rode up on a glowing horse. It looks like the phosphorescent powder that they used to make it glow was harmless, but Tex is taking care of the horse until he's sure it's okay.